In this video I'm going to show you 5 easy variations of the humble feather stitch. So notice that I've drawn some lines on my fabric for this. Now you don't have to draw the lines on, but I think while you're practicing this stitch it does help tremendously to do that, and once you've got some practice and you know what you're doing, you can try it without the lines. To draw them on I've used an Aquatrick marker, so it's a nice fine pen and it will wash off, so I can just spray it lightly afterwards with a water spray and the lines will disappear. So if you did want to draw them on your embroidery you could do it that way. So I'm going to just start with the basic feather stitch, and everything else is based on this. So I'm going to come up, I've got 4 lines here, and I'm going to come up at the top of the left hand line, and I'm going to miss a line out and come down on that 3rd line there at the top. So this is a cross between sort of a buttonhole and a fly stitch really. So I'm going to make a loop like that, so my loop comes down, and then I come up on the 2nd line inside that loop about that far down, and then I'm going to tension it towards the bottom so it makes that V shape. Now each stitch is connected to the previous stitch, so we're going to carry on. So now I'm going to come straight across horizontally down on that 4th row, make my loop, back up inside the loop, and try and do these the same distance if you can. So I'm coming down the same distance that I did for the first stitch. Tension it towards me. If I don't tension it towards me I get a weird sort of T-shaped stitch, so just loosen that off. So tension towards you to get the V shape, and that's all I'm going to do all the way down. So horizontally across from where I just came out, down on that row, and I'm just using those rows to guide me. So across to there. You can see that feather stitch start to take shape now. You can see how each one connects to the previous one. I'm just holding that thread down as well, just to help keep the tension on the thread. It's easy to do this with 2 hands free, so consider some sort of clamp or frame to hold your work in, and I'm just going to go all the way to the bottom. So I'm nearly at the bottom, just going to keep that stitch going, probably get 2 more in I think. And then I'll just show you how to finish off. So this is the last one, and you finish this as you would for a fly stitch or a buttonhole. So we've tensioned it tightly, but until I fasten that down that stitch isn't secure, so I'm just going to take my needle down the other side of it there to secure it, and then I can weave my thread through under the back. So that is the basic feather stitch. So this is the same stitch, but we're going to work it on a curve now. You might find that you have an embroidery where you want to do something a bit more decorative. It's a really pretty stitch, so this is how to do it on a curve. So it's exactly the same process. So I'm coming up on the top left corner. You can start in the top right if you want, it doesn't matter. So I miss a line out, I go down on that 3rd line, and then come up and make my stitch as before. Now you'll notice that I'm doing it at a slight angle, so I've got it doesn't go straight across the top, I've got a line at a diagonal, because you want to imagine that changing with the shape of the curve. So the stitch should stay the same all the way down. So I won't come across horizontally, but I'll come across horizontal to the shape of the curve, if that makes sense. So I'm going to come across to there on the outside line, make my loop, come up inside my loop, so that bit's exactly the same. And then you want to sort of imagine you're curving around the shape, so I've just made these stitches a bit smaller, so we're curving round to the left now. So I'm just changing the angle slightly so that I'm always going across the shape of the curve. I'm not following the grain of the fabric now, I'm following the shape of the curve, but otherwise it's exactly the same. So I'm going straight across from where I came out. They make a line if you join them up in the middle. You can cut that knot off now. I've just put that knot down there, and stitching over it will cover the thread on the back and secure the end of the thread. So straight across from that one, and I can just curve all the way to the bottom my feather stitch. So that's gone around the curve quite nicely. I suggest a nice gentle curve. Too much of an angle change and it looks a bit of a disjointed stitch, so a nice gentle curve works best. And just put one more in, and then again to finish off I'm just going to go over the outside of the stitch there just to secure that and weave it through on the back, so that's a nice curved feather stitch. So same stitch again, but I'm going to freestyle this one a little bit. So if you were doing something where you wanted to maybe do a picture, or you wanted a plant or sea life or something like that, this is a good one for that. So I've just done one line down the middle now because I'm not too worried about following the lines, but I'm going to follow the principle, but I'm not going to worry too much about whether the stitches are level. I'm just going to change where I bring the stitches up and down, try and make it look a little bit more organic, I think is the word, which is actually quite hard when you've been stitching a long time, because you sort of got to make it a bit messy, I guess. So let's go mad, let's go over there and do a little short one, and let's come up here. We could do a narrow one there, make that one a little bit longer. Let's cut the knot off as we've got to it. So just changing how far up I come up and down and how far out to the side I come, just so it looks a little bit less perfect, I guess, which you think would be easy, but it's actually quite difficult. I find it quite difficult. But you get the idea. So exactly the same stitch, I'm forming the stitches in the same way, but I'm just not following the lines, and that would look a little bit more organic and can make some nice plant and leaf shapes and foliage and sea plants. So all the way to the bottom, quite quick because you don't have to worry about being on the lines. And again, you could curve this one as well if you want it to look even more realistic. But I should just go straight down. Let's come over there with that one. Let's finish it off there. Don't forget to go over the end just to secure it. So there's a little bit more of a freestyle feather stitch. So we're going back to our lines now, our nice straight lines, the safety of the lines, and I'm going to do, like we did originally, a normal feather stitch, but we're going to do a double one. So we start exactly the same way. We go across one, so we go across to that line there, up in the middle, and then we keep going that way, because normally I would, for a normal feather stitch, I would go back again, but I'm going to go to that final line now, so we have 3 stitches in a row, and then we're going to go back the other way. So I'm going back to that line, still horizontally across from where I came out with my stitch, still forming the stitches in exactly the same way, but we go 2 either way now. So now we go back another 2, and we just go back and forth. So this makes a wider looking feather stitch. It creates really nice patterns, this stitch, and you can get quite creative with them. So you could, if you wanted, add more lines and keep going, and it would give you more of a zigzag shape. So just going to keep going. Let's cut the knot off. So just keep going back and forth all the way to the bottom. I think we'll just get one more back into the left side. Happens to fit quite well. That's not planned. It was just luck. And there's the last one over the end to secure it. So really pretty decorative double feather stitch. So still the same stitch, but we're going to make this one closed, which gives it actually a completely different look, even though it's the same process. So I've just got 2 lines to help me this time. And this one makes a triangle shape. So I'm going to come up and down at the top of both of those lines, and instead of coming in the middle like we did before, I'm going to come back on that line where I started, and then you'll see my first triangle shape. So it's kind of like a lopsided feather stitch. Now we're going to go back down in the top corner. This is where the triangle forms, and come up on the right side. Now I'm not coming up level with that because that gives me a different shaped triangle. I'm going to come down below that so I get that shape there. Then we go down. I'm going actually above that stitch there. That will just help to pull it down when you tension it. You know, still sort of keeping this loop. There is my loop. So stay on that line now, not level, come down further so you make that shaped triangle down in the previous one. So each one is connected to the last one and finishes off the triangle. You can see that effect it's starting to give. It's quite a different look to it, this one, even though it's worked in a very similar way. You can see when I let go, you can see how it loosens up, so each one relies on the previous one, so it's quite good just to keep hold of it. When you finish it, it will secure everything, but while you're working it, it does tend to loosen. So you can see I'm just holding the tension on this thread here. And then the finishing off of this one is what will secure the whole thing. So through to the back. And you can see how it pulls everything down tightly and finishes it all off at a nice tension. So that's 5 ways to work a feather stitch. Now it is a really versatile stitch, you can do a lot with it. So come back in a couple of weeks' time and we're going to show you 5 decorative feather stitch variations, and you can have a lot of fun with this stitch. So I hope you found this video useful and want to have a go at this lovely little stitch. If you have liked this video, do give us a thumbs up. Don't forget to click the subscribe button below, and if you click the little bell you'll get notifications of when we upload something new, and we look forward to seeing you next time.